Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you all today. Remember, you can find us at si.com/NFL/Raiders/on SI for your best Raiders content. You can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter, and on IG and Threads at Hondo SR. This next guy needs no introduction. He's a decorated journalist, a highly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area, and one of my favorite humans on earth. I am blessed to be able to call him a friend, and he is somebody I respect. He's somebody I admire. He's a great husband. He's a wonderfully successful businessman, but he's just a top-notch human being. My buddy, Jonathan Shop. John, great to have you, bud.
Always a pleasure. We've been doing it a long time. It continues to amaze, to fascinate. It's too much fun, so we keep on going. As long as the game is good, we are good with the game, and the game is still really good.
All right. After we're done taping, I need you to stay on here because I had someone in the NFL tell me something, a message I'm supposed to pass on to you. And I forgot to tell you before we started taping. So please don't let me forget. It was an NFL person that said to me, "You got to tell this to Guitar." So just bear with me if you would when we're done and remind me. John, I'm down in Florida, and so for some unfortunate family business, but um I leave the stadium about 2 a.m. on Friday morning after the Thursday night game. I get on the plane, land in Orlando, and I had a text from an NFL executive. And he had given me a video look at Geno Smith's sneak. And he put inexcusable. And then he put basically the description was either he has not been coached on how to run this, or they didn't realize he couldn't run this. There, I don't have as much issue with a sneak there, but either him not being prepared or unable to do it, I have a problem with it. Now, where I was sitting on the field, I was okay with it because I thought in the first half the play calling had been pretty good. And so I thought, all right, maybe there's something they saw on tape, whatever. But after seeing that angle, I was flabbergasted. The NFL people were talking about it. What did you think when you saw that play live?
In a way, I thought it might be a little bit of a microcosm of how things have gone with Geno Smith in the Raiders so far. I was left wondering exactly what the thought process was. I was left wondering how they thought this would end up turning out to be successful. And then you see the play itself, and you do start to wonder, is this just a matter of Geno Smith confidence not being there? Is this a matter of his body of time catching up? Is this a matter of it all coming together? It's a little bit of a strange game because for those of us, a lot of people thinking the Broncos were just going to steamroll the Raiders, they obviously did not. And so much of what the Raiders did on the defensive side of the ball contributed to a very low output for the Broncos. But when you look at that play specifically, you're left to wonder, was this really the best? Was this really the best position that the offense could be put in? They looked at all the options and trying to turn over all the rocks, trying to find anything to spark the offense to get some kind of an advantage in a one-on-one matchup. Was this the one that they thought was going to produce the best advantage or the best matchup for them? It suggests to me, which was my main takeaway from the Thursday night game, is that the Raiders, the first thing they have to do is they have to find a way to get competitive at the point of attack, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They have to find a way to do that before they can worry much about skilled players and making big explosive plays. That was really the main takeaway I had from the game, and I thought that play in a way kind of supported that notion. I think for the Raiders, they're so deficient that area right now that if they can take care of that, if they can measure up and compete on the offensive line, that side of the ball, I think the other stuff's going to start to fall into place. So it's not so much to me that the sky is falling and that this one quarterback decision is what's led to such an unproductive offense. The standout to me is that they're so deficient on the offensive line that there's really not a whole lot they can do.
All right, so I want to address something and I'd like your analysis. And one of the reasons I love having you on is yes, we go around the entirety of the NFL. My official title is senior NFL writer on SI and Las Vegas Raiders beat writer. So I like that. But sometimes I'm so involved in the Raiders that it's hard to see the forest from the trees. I come at it microly, you come at it macroly. So my question to you is this. When you look at the Raiders, and last year they had arguably, in my opinion, the worst offensive coordinator in Luke Getzey. They fire him. They had an interim, which I thought did an admirable job as an interim, and they're worse. You go spend 60 million large to get the quarterback you want. You hire the most expensive quarterback offensive coordinator in the entire NFL. You get the number 6 overall pick, a guy who's the best running back prospect since Saquon, not Saquon, but the best since, and you're worse. Now, they lose Colton Miller, one of the best left tackles. That's a big deal. I get it, but it's not like Storm Forsythe's been horrible. You got a couple of young, you lose both of your guards, starting guards who are good young players. That's a big deal. But even before that, they were deficient. Help me, John, wrap my mind around this. I'm trying to be analytical, but I'm also trying to be fair. And the point is, you got rid of everybody else because you said they weren't good enough. Put tens of millions of dollars into the offensive side, and you're worse. Help me out here, John.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. So, I mean, if we step back from a 30,000-foot view, you're looking at the personnel and the coordination. They appear not to be mixing and matching too well. There's too many misses. There's too many missed assignments. There's too many things that get blown up. And traditionally, of the offensive line, as we know, it only takes one guy to leave a gaping hole and a big blow up and a big mess. One guy is out of position or does one thing, takes a step in the wrong direction, and all of a sudden the rest of them look horrible and the quarterback's down. So it looks to me like they may have misevaluated on some offensive line guys they thought they could develop. They look plain lacking in talent and physical ability relatively. We all know all the players in the NFL are absolutely unbelievably good at football. That's to take it for granted. Then now you're comparing the very best of the best, and the Raiders are way short. So I don't think it's easy enough to point to the coaching and say, look, here's the stats and here's what's gone on. That hasn't worked. And I think at this point it's fair to say, what are they being asked to do? And at the offensive line leadership level, which goes all the way up to the top, including the coordinator and the head coach, what can we get these guys to do that they can do proficiently to get us through the rest of the season? It looks like the talent and it looks like the coordination have been a mismatch. And the NFL is a short-term league, as we know. I don't know how major or massive the changes the Raiders are considering in the offseason. I wouldn't think that they would look at blowing the whole thing up on that side of the ball, but they've got to find some guys that can do what they're asking them to do. And they've also got to be sure that they're asking them to do things that they can do. When you look at the third down numbers from Thursday night, for example, how many games are you going to win when that's your third down success rate? It's not even going to be close. Not even going to be close to enough to compete for a playoff spot or compete for the division. I think the offensive line for the Raiders has a longer way to go than just about anything. At the same time, you hope that they can really dramatically shuffle the deck and get some things with what's left of this season. It would not be asking too much to show us some development at that position on that side of the ball. Show us some actual progress within the offensive line. again, they ought to be playing as many of the young guys as they can and have. They need to find out what guys can do, what guys may be able to develop, and what guys they simply have to move on from. It really is the one of the, it's probably the biggest thing I'm going to watch when I look at the Raiders the rest of the year is what happens with this line the rest of the way.
And here's the whole deal. When you bring in a new regime, it's not unfair of fans to say, show us improvement. And so when you're sitting here after week 10 and you're worse, those are legitimate concerns. This fan base is not being unreal. Listen, there have been times that I've covered the Raiders and I've told you privately, boy, I thought they were unrealistic. There is nothing unrealistic here right now. I agree with you 100%. All right. We're watching the evolution of the National Football League. The trade deadline in hockey, in baseball, NBA has always been a big deal. Traditionally in the NFL, it has not been a big deal. It is now becoming a big one. I like this. I think it's better for the game. And there's some trade deadline shine. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. You know what? We talk about the Jets doing so many dumb things as a franchise. We're going to have to give them credit this time because it looks to me like they did a lot of good things this time. Look at what they got rid of. They got rid of Sauce Gardner, who looks like a pretty underperforming, relatively with very few interceptions. Not sure they were going to get much out of him. Boom. They get rid of him. They make the big deal with Quinn Williams. And all of a sudden, the Jets have set themselves up to draft very well in 2027 without going through the 2027 draft. And obviously, there's one before then. What you need to know is Jeremiah Smith, Jeremiah Smith, Jeremiah Smith. He's got to be the top player in that draft as far as ability to come into the NFL that you could project as of this date. So the Jets not only dump a bunch of salary, they position themselves actually to make a big chunk of improvement and maybe put down a foundation. Pretty amazing. I sure hope Aaron Glenn continues to stay there and get a chance to do it because we may be looking back in like 2030 at the Jets improvement and pointing to this trade deadline when it started. That was a pretty big piece of franchise build that they did. I'm not sure. If you look at Gardner, I mean, I don't know how you project a guy to add that much value at the cornerback position when he hasn't really done that in the first place. So you wonder if the Colts overpaid for it.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and I need you to hear me because I think this was a bad trade for the Colts, but I'm going to tell you why I think both teams won it. So bear with me here for a minute because that sounds like an oxymoron, and it's not. Sauce Gardner is a guy whose production has been going down, but he's a young player. But the NFL is getting more and more careful with handsy defensive backs. They want the points. And he's a very handsy defensive back. AKA Darquez Denard Trey Waynes, who you and I both know. So I think it was smart of the Jets to let that go. But where I think it was smart for the Colts is they made a statement to the rest of the NFL. We're buying in. We're buying in. He's an upgrade, which he is. Yeah, we may have overpaid him, but we think for the first time in a long time, we got a shot to do something this year. And we're willing to. They made a statement to their locker room. They made a statement to their fans. And it'd be like if the Raiders next year out of the blue had a season like the Colts are, and they made a big trade to go get somebody to show their fans, see, we're being aggressive. Do I think they overpaid? Yes. But for the first time in a long time, they had a chance to make a statement to their fans, and they did. That's how I can say I think they overpaid, but I think it was a good one. Am I making sense?
Yeah, sometimes it can make sense to overpay if there's a good purpose and a support behind it. The Colts are obviously in a completely new regime because they've got new ownership with their owner passing away. And this is a surprise year for them so far rather than just stick with what they've got or maybe try to hang on. They send a message that, hey, we want to be in it to win it. If we can win this division, we want to be in it to win it and see what we can get out of this whole this whole surprise.
Howie Rossman again proves he's the best general manager in all the NFL. I mean, this guy just keeps pulling rabbits out of his hat.
Isn't it something? Always looking to make deals, but always with the capital to do it. How many times do you see the Eagles massively reaching, or all of a sudden that they're running out of roster? No, they've almost had too much roster. They've almost had too much of a roster in Philadelphia. This week, interesting moves, right? The big one, Jalen Phillips. The obvious connection here is Vic Fangio, the coordinator for the Eagles, was in Miami. But this is an interesting move by Roseman, because when you've had the amount of success that he's had and the Eagles have had, and you've maybe come into the year with a legitimate idea that you could possibly repeat, get in a position for the Super Bowl, you wonder again, do you do too much of the trade line, sends the wrong message, gets people a little bit nervous and feeling a little insecure, or do you try to figure out a way to pull a rabbit out of a hat? And once again, it looks like that what the Eagles have done here lately, you put it all together, that's kind of what they did. They got Brandon Graham out of retirement. Nolan Smith's coming back from injury. They've got Jalen Phillips. And all of a sudden, you start thinking down the road a little bit, somebody's going to have to beat the Eagles. They're going to have to beat them. You get the feeling that the Eagles are not going to beat themselves. And they're practically the favorite to get through the NFC until somebody beats them. And yeah, you're left reminded that we're watching a Hall of Fame career in progress in Howie Roseman. He's, again, so short on the credit for being able to survive the Carson Wentz experience and just his whole career being able to survive the massive blip in it, the mistake that the Eagles made, drafts Jalen Hurts, puts this all together, and now look what they've done. If you're an Eagles fan, you've got the feeling right now that you're absolutely going to have a chance to compete to win every single year. So this really is one of the model franchises right now, and certainly the best GM in the sport. So Raider fans, for sure, you're looking at this like, hey, this is where we want to be someday, understanding that everybody wants to be there. And Howie Roseman is at the top of the sport with an incredible amount of eyeballs on him. It's going to be interesting to see how these trades work out for the Eagles. But if you take a bigger picture look with Graham coming back and with Smith and a lot of the Eagles' problems that you maybe saw at the start of the year, let's see how they resolve themselves between now and, say, December 15th.
I agree. John, I want to talk to you about something that I find fascinating. You and I have been friends away from media for a couple of decades, and so you know who I know. And I'm friends with lots of referees. NFL, some big named ones, some no named ones, college basketball, college football, Major League Baseball, hockey, NBA. And I trust these men. They're men of integrity, just like I think that you are. They're good men. They would never admit this publicly because they can't, because they would go against their league, and no one's going to do that. Be like, you probably, as an attorney, are not going to step out and disagree with the bar. Maybe you would privately in a bar association meeting, but not publicly. I don't know that. I don't know if that's similar, if I'm comparing an apple to an orange or what. But my point to you is, it's just like if I had a criticism against SI, I'm not going to make it publicly. Now, in the interest of fairness, I don't, but I'm saying I wouldn't do that. Having said that, I was talking to a very good friend of mine this week who is a professional sports referee. And we got on the subject because of Dabo Sweeney. And he said to me, I think the officiating in the NFL has been significantly better this year than last. And I agree with him, by the way. Not perfect, but significantly better. But he said, I don't have a problem with what Dabo said. I think the players, the coaches all have to face the media, put the refs out there. And he said to me, he goes, it would expose the 1% that are terrible. He goes, and those of us that are good, it would protect us. What say you?
It's no longer college football. So all the old college football stuff, graduating this stuff, it's all been traded in, whether you like it or not. It's been traded in. And now the massive
But I'm talking about across pro and college, not just college. I know Dabo
oh
made the comments, but I'm talking about
yeah.
this guy was a professional ref that said, I think Dabo's right. I think we should have to face the music. He goes, it exposes the 1% that are bad.
Yes.
Love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea across all pro sports and the college sports, basically the college sports that have a significant betting action on them. And I look at it as a way to help the security of the game. I also look at it as a way, uh, if you're giving media access on a regular basis to officials, just like players and coaches, I think it's actually going to help people understand what officials see, what sometimes they can't see because they're not watching from a TV angle, they're watching on the same plane as the game. So I think there's only a positive in that. So at the college level, you used to be able to protect that under the guise of, it's college athletics. That stuff's gone. So yeah, I actually think there's only a positive that could come out of it. Dabo specifically looks like a guy, maybe a fish out of water now, way frustrated with a whole lot of things. So he could be 100% right about this, and it's going to be taken a little bit askew because of the situation he's in, the struggles he's had, is his program downfalling, etc. So you have to take him out of it. The message itself, I think, is accurate. And it does bother me how infrequently officials, players, I'm sorry, coaches, owners, players, front office guys, it shouldn't be something they can't touch anymore. Everybody should be interested in what's best for the NFL and making it better. I do think, like you, that the officiating is better this year than it was last. I think a lot of that has to do with some of the quick reviews and the eye in the sky stuff that we now take for granted. But of course, we still want an off field official. There's no downside to accountability. There's no downside to officials in 2025 communicating more openly and more clearly with the fans that drive the game. It's not 1975, 85, it's not even 2005. It would be nice to see a push. It would be nice to see officials explaining and receiving some kind of question and answer, not just flat critique or flat criticism, because they really are incredibly important to the game. And now, again, with that gambling cloud always in the sky, I do think that you've got a better chance to support the notion that this is the time to get officials with some more accountability than they've ever seen before because the games are more vulnerable to trouble.
100% agree with you. And I thought it was so I'm going to ask Roger Goodell about this. Um I'm because I'm writing an article. It just spurred me. I just sent Dabo's comments out to some of my friends that are officials, and it spurred me. I remember years ago, one of the most famous officials in any sports was a guy by the name of Eddie Hightower, who was my friend, and he had made a really bad call once. And so I invited him on my radio show, which you used to be a regular guest on. It was a daily radio show for many, many years across the Midwest. And I had Eddie on, and I'll never forget my jaw hit the ground. I remember because you heard it and you were stunned when he talked about calling a coach and named the coach, and he'd cost them a championship, and he'd made a bad call. And he said, I called the coach. Said, I want you to know right up front. I went back, watched the film. I made a terrible call. I cost you. I'm sorry. And I remember fans hated this guy. Coaches loved him. I think it would make officials officiating better. And that guy who was human and would make bad calls, every official would defend. I mean, every coach defended that guy. They loved that guy because he was a guy that would look at a coach and say, "Yeah, I screwed up." I mean, I just think it makes it better. All right, I got to ask you this. Every week we do a uh, off-field story of the week from NFL to RN. Help me out here.
How about it? Really interesting story this week in the Times about former NFL players and current NFL players getting into nursing. If you're out there remembering Meet the Parents, Greg RN, if you remember, Greg was a male nurse in Meet the Parents, it was kind of thought of as a funny thing. And at this time, it looks like about 13% of RNs are males. The NFL has begun to produce some, which is ironic in some ways when you think about the physical task of being in the NFL, and incredibly impressive when you look at what these guys are contributing in the healthcare system. We're talking about big guys like DeBrickashaw Ferguson has
I
become
love
a
him.
I mean, this is a guy that was, I think, like a top 10 or at least a first round pick
Yeah.
for the Jets. Um, Currently on the Chiefs, Edwards Hilaire is a name that obviously Raider fans know and people have seen play. I think he's currently on the practice squad. He's in the process of becoming a nurse. So a lot of times we're so locked in into what these guys are doing during their career. And you think about the old cliche, like it's easy to just go sell insurance after your playing days or just get on TV. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds. I think there's hundreds of people within the NFL who are either retired or are done. Basically, they're done playing, they're done working in it each year. What do these guys do? It's a very interesting, nice little niche that's come about where NFL guys are realizing there's some nice ties to their work in their career in terms of preparing to and play pro football and becoming a nurse, which can be a super, obviously, highly skilled, highly important, and often it's got to be somewhat stressful to deal with. A really interesting story off the field. What happens to guys? I don't recall when we talked about DeBrickashaw Ferguson, maybe with some of those better Jet teams doing some dirty work on the offensive line, doing it well. I don't recall ever thinking this guy's going to end up to be a nurse in the 2020s. Pretty cool stuff and an interesting wrinkle, not one that we typically see when we're talking about you know, post playing career days.
And I love Brick, so I don't have a problem with that. All right, John, let's move on to our because it's Sunday morning, it's game day. Um, we're taping this before game day, but obviously it's game day when this airs. For the year, we're in week 10. And for the year, our record is 6-1-2. I've won 6 of the weeks. You've won 1. We've tied 2. Last week, we didn't disagree on any, so it's a tie week. And you pick the 4 best games, and we just give our pick and keep track. So let's go. Who do we got? I have no idea who we're even picking this week.
The most interesting games of the week. Yeah, we've got some interesting ones. The interesting thing about Ravens and Vikings, because you think of it at first, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not like they're in the division. You got to look at their standings because believe it or not, folks, as bad as the Ravens have been, they're only 2 games back. That's it. And the Vikings are an interesting story. There's a whole lot going on there. They're in a stuffed division that's very tightly packed. They're only a game back. So you think Ravens and Vikings, what does that really matter? In a way, it matters a lot to both. From this point, if somehow, if somehow the Ravens can get a shot in December to play to take the division lead, that would be a surprise given how things have gone so far. And at the same time, you've got the Vikings all over the place. People don't know whether to write them off or think there's some kind of contender. This is the Ravens at the Vikings.
All right, so I want to make this clear because we have a lot of new viewers. I said at the beginning of the year, I was hearing from people close to the Ravens that there was a possibility of a change coming at coach. Okay. I'm still hearing that. It makes no sense to me because I think John Harbaugh is a great coach, but I understand how this works. I believe in him. I just think that John's too good. I I'm going with the Ravens with the I think it's at the Vikings as a matter of fact, but I'm just not sold on what the Vikings are doing. Boy, the way how bad do the Vikings look? And how bad do the Raiders look for not wanting Sam Darnold? That's a whole nother story we're going to get into in the offseason. But I'm going to go with the Ravens. I'm a buyer on John. I'm going with the Ravens.
Going against the grain, obviously you think there's some advantage to the home field. And to their credit, I think the Vikings built a really good dome. I love the fact that they built it to be loud. It's really wild to think that the Ravens could have any kind of chance. I got to take the Vikings, not only because they're at home, but because the Ravens are I don't think they can stop anybody well enough. I get the Vikings in this one. This one is sneaky interesting. The idea is we want the four most interesting games of the week.
Let
This
me
is a
just say
little
something. I don't look when I make my picks about what Vegas thinks, but I have to imagine the Vikings are heavy favorites here.
well, I mean, heavy, relatively speaking, in the NFL, heavy. It looks to me like they've got the Vikings plus 3.5. So the Vikings are getting points. I don't know
Wow.
exactly how that is. Yeah, Baltimore is favored by more than a field goal.
That
That's a little odd.
stuns me.
It does. I don't know if they've got some idea that Derrick Henry's just going to run right through them. I don't know. I am not. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure about JJ McCarthy. There are things that he does that make me think he can be a successful NFL quarterback, but there's also now an injury history, and I don't know what to make as much of his college playing days. I just don't know what to make of him. So
The
I
injury
think,
history is what concerns me most.
yeah, because it's easy to hear injury news and just kind of write it off and think, oh, this guy's good. Yeah, you kind of forget about it. But even with the Jaden Daniels injury, I know it's not his throwing arm and it's his elbow, but is this something that has any effect on him? Of course it does. If a guy is a quarter second or a half second slower, that matters at some positions. McCarthy's injury history now suggests that he's not 100. He's not going to be totally 100% at any time this year. And then the question in the future is his 100%? How close is it to what he was before he got hurt? There's a lot going on there. I somehow see the Vikings in what should be a pretty interesting game. Now, Raider fans know what happened with Jacksonville during the trade deadline. Jacksonville is going to the Texans in a game that, for some reason, it seems like these two teams are always playing. Of course, they're in the same division. But again, when you look at the standings, this one matters a little bit more than you would think it might matter at this point, or you think that it should. Jaguars at Texans.
All right, so I'm going to say a couple things here. First of all, I love D'Amico Ryan. I love the Houston team. I like the way they're building it. Okay, so this is no slam on them because I'm a buyer on them. Liam Cohn earned my respect when they're here playing in Vegas. Well, I'm in Florida, but when they're in Vegas, when they were here in Vegas, and again here, that's my home base. Um, and he went for it on fourth down on the goal line. He just made a statement. I like coaches that just said, "No, you're my guys." I'll never forget one time eating lunch with Jim Tressel, who, in the interest of full disclosure, is a friend. So I don't think he would have a problem with me telling this story. And I was asking him, I was picking his brain about coaches because I love to get in the brain of successful coaches and learn what makes them work. And he said to me, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not a direct quote, but he basically said, when you're a head coach, you're a CEO. And you got to hire guys that inspire and teach. But from your standpoint, your guys got to know he believes in me. He goes, and they're going to fail. And when they do, you got to go into that press conference and you got to tell them, man, I made a dumb call. Because the guys in the locker room know he made that call because he believed in me and I let him down. And he talked about, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but he talked about gripping the heart of your team. The best coach has the heart of that team in his hand. They know he's got our back. We got his back. We're in this together. And when Liam did that, I was like, I like to do this on Twitter a lot. When I'm at a game, I'll put, if they get this or not, I support this call, or I don't like this call right here, because I want to get it out there, because even if it fails, because it very well might, I want people to know I'm not going to come back and do fake revisionist history. And Liam, there's something there. I don't know what the there is. I don't know how good the there is, but I like that team. I love the addition of Jacoby. I can tell you, Jacoby is very happy to be there. Jacoby is a friend of mine. Uh, it's very different than the Raiders. That's not a slam on the Raiders. It's just different. I'm going with the Jags, John, and that's probably again. I don't look at Vegas. I bet Vegas would tell me that is a stupid pick, but I'm going to go with the Jags. I saw something in Liam. I'm a buyer.
Vegas has the Texans getting one at home, getting a point at home, which is a little bit odd. Um, I wonder if the Cohen I wonder if the Cohen outlook comes from the mentoring that he had, because it does look like he's got a little bit of a different chemistry. It looks like he's got some advantages that may be built in from where he learned how to work, which could really pay for the Jaguars. The Jaguars have to be fantastic, excited that they've got Myers, especially with the Hunter issues already, durability issues, and or injury issues. It does look like it's kind of a lost season for Houston. It just does. It does.
And to the in the interest of full disclosure, let's pat you and I on the back. We've been sharing people that NFL people were telling us back during the draft season they were not going to go for Travis because he wanted to play both ways. And they said, I mean, you and I talked about this. I had one GM tell me we would pick Travis. We would have looked at trading up to get him. But when we talked to him and he specifically said, I'm playing both ways, no. And he said, I'm telling you right now, there's no way he stays healthy. And the guy was right.
Yeah, and I mean, boy, that young Jaguars general manager rolled the dice to get him. So now they're going to try to cover it with Myers. I think it works this week. I like the Jaguars because it seems like they've got more momentum, and it seems like the season's kind of lost down there in Houston. But we know that Houston will be back very quickly if they can figure out a way to stay healthier next year. But we like the Jaguars this week. One of the better rivalries out west, we all know, is the Rams and 49ers. Here we go again. Rams at 49ers. It should be delightful the entire day. It should be tight. Do the 49ers have the Rams number yet again?
I have, so let me tell you this, tell everybody this. I don't know what games John's picks. I purposely don't look. I always think in my head, all right, here's who I think John is going to pick. And this is the first time we're 3 for 3. You always usually throw one in there I wasn't thinking about. We're at 3 for 3. I'm interested to see if we go 4 for 4 this week because I think these are all interesting games. I want to make a couple comments. I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are the most underrated coach GM combo in the NFL. I think Kyle Shanahan is underrated because people do not, they think because of his last name. And that's completely unfair, but it's truth. It's just truth. I love Kyle Shanahan. I think he's a good coach. Not great yet. Got to have to get a chip to be great. But I think he's the one of the best of the good. I think John Lynch is a phenomenal general manager. I love that combo. Don't even bring up the quarterback draft in which they picked Brock Purdy because they have bosses. They didn't want to go the way that they went. That said, I think the best GM coach combo in the league, best, is Les Snead and Sean McVay. I have been on this since the beginning of the year. I have been calling the Rams a legit Super Bowl contender. I think there are 3 teams in the NFC that could win the Super Bowl. Philly, but I don't think Philly wants a matchup with a healthy Rams. If Philly gets a healthy Rams, they're going to lose. That's a terrible matchup. And the Lions and Philly. Those are the 3 teams to me. There's only really one AFC team that I think can win it, and that's the Chiefs. I believe in them 110%. So having said that, it's no disrespect of the 49ers. I'm just that big of a guy buying on the Rams. I'm going with the Rams over the Niners. And I think it's at the Niners even, but I'm going with the Rams.
It is, and they're actually getting, since we're going with the theme, they're getting 5 at home, which is a lot. 5 is a lot. They are getting 5 at home. So right now, a lot of momentum behind the Rams. And when you talk about the coach and the GM mix. When you mention those two, I think the coach and the GM are on the same page better than just about anybody across the sport in those two situations in Los Angeles and certainly in San Francisco. I mean, I thought that Lynch and Shanahan could pretty much go wherever they wanted if they wanted to go ahead and start over somewhere.
Let me tell you this one. Let me just tell you this one, okay? If I'm an NFL owner, I would call up San Francisco and say, "What's the cost? I want your GM and your coach." And if you look at Rossman and Sirianni, Snead and McVay, you look at the Chiefs, the best teams, there is harmony of purpose, harmony of thought. Everybody's on the same page. You don't see discombobulation. To me, that is the most underrated part of the NFL. And quite frankly, it's the most underrated part of professional sports.
It probably is in the current day, it probably is. Now I'm going to take a wild card here and go with the 49ers. I'm just picking the Rams to have a bad day. I'm picking Robert Saleh and company to have a turnover or two and a signature win for the year for Kyle Shanahan. This is not a game on paper that looks like the 49ers should have a shot at, but
Is that the only one we disagreed on?
that's the only one so far. We've got the one last left that I'm sure you probably saw too, because there is
Can
fanatical.
I guess? Can I guess what the game
Yes,
is?
I know you
And I
got
don't
it.
know. But to me, I think it's the most intriguing game. And I take that back. I think it's the second most. I really like that Rams Niners, but it's got to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots. It's got to be. This game is huge and intriguing to me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It is the fanaticism, the excitement in New England that they're rebooting this quick. They got to be off. They got to be off and running. They're exciting. They're changing holiday plans. They're getting all stuff lined up. They're like, here come the Patriots. So they are with a 1-game lead over the Bills, which without any question makes pretty much every single one of them a must win. The Patriots are upstart. It looks like the value of a coach there is unbelievable. It's no knock on Jared Mayo, no knock on the end of the Belichick era, but it looks to me, and it seemed to me the whole time that Mike Vrabel was going to be the best of the second go round head coaches that we probably see lined up in this, maybe in this entire decade, if he has the success in New England from here, right? The Buccaneers are sitting at 6-2. That is in their comfortable spot atop the NFC South. The funny thing is, the Panthers are only 1 game behind. So it's not like the Buccaneers can just take it easy, fall asleep, cash one in. This is an interesting game. There could be a weather element with the weather that we're seeing out there across the Southeast today. New England is going to Tampa. It's not to me that New England will have anywhere near a semi home field advantage in Tampa, but I think they'll have some fans in Tampa. And there's something about that ship that always has me kind of write off any home field advantage of significance for Tampa. So I kind of throw that thing out of the window. Drake May going up against Todd Bowles, the coordination and some of the line play I like in Tampa. We know how some of those kids were coached when they were in college at Pittsburgh. I think people underestimate some of the power and success that the Tampa Bay line has. Drake May on the road at Tampa.
So I got a couple of observations here. Big shout out to our guy, Drew Stanton, who called Drake May a franchise quarterback. People mocked him after Drake's first year, and he held his ground last year, said, no, he is, number one. How do the Raiders feel? They could have had Vrabel and they didn't want him. Same way with Sam Darnold. I disagree on the home atmosphere in Tampa. If you've never been there to a game, it is phenomenal. Those fans are, it is an awesome, it feels like college when you go there. It is a legit home field. I am a complete buyer on the Patriots. I love Vrabel. Love Vrabel. Love. I love the way Vrabel coaches. I love Drake May. And as you know, Josh McDaniels, I think, is a very, very bad head coach, but I think he is one of the best offensive coordinators in the entire National Football League. I love Josh. It amazes me how many guys leave and you find out, wow, they still can coach. You know, people were fired Josh McDaniels. He knows nothing about offense. It was all Tom Brady. Well, no, it turns out he knew a lot about offense. But anyways, but I'm going with the Bucks here. And for a couple of reasons. I think they're more developed than the rebuilding New England. Something Tom Izzo taught me, and I agree with him, is teams have to learn how to win. They have to learn how to win. And I believe in Vrabel, who knows how to win, but with that young team, they have to learn how. I think they go into a little bit of a buzzsaw here. I could see this like a late field goal with a drive by Baker Mayfield, and they win, you know, 21, whatever. Just something late and they win like this, whatever. But my point to you is I'm going to go with the Bucks here. I think you're going to probably take the Patriots. I'm going to take the Bucks.
When I look at the Patriots, I understand what you're saying about learning how to win and not going to take anything away from them last week, but the Falcons gave them that game. So Vrabel has a challenge this week into coaching them, not trying to coach their confidence down, but kind of finding a way to say, hey, we got a little bit of a gift there. Let's go ahead and parlay it and build on it. I don't think the Patriots, you really shouldn't have anybody coming in with a big head in the NFL. The Patriots, they were given that game last week rather than having to go earn it in overtime or finish them off before the Falcons' folly. I like the Buccaneers this week. And when I look at the Patriots' schedule, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think they're going to fall this week. The Patriots have and then they've got the Jets quickly on Thursday, which looks good for them. They've got the Bengals, the Giants, and then the bye, a later bye in week 14. So give me the Buccaneers. I like the Patriots to lose this week. I like them to win the next three going into the bye. And then I like the hype machine to have exploded. If Vrabel can get three of these four before the bye week, including the short week on Thursday with the Jets, I think they're going to be in really good shape for that late run, which includes a game with the Bills that probably decides the division. This week, I think they do slip a little bit. Not that they're overconfident with what happened last week, the gift from the Falcons. I like Todd Bowles. I like the defensive line. I like the pressures that are coming to Drake May. I too like the Buccaneers. And yeah, I'm with you. Close. Less than 4 points.
Wow. I got to tell you, Shannon laughs and she always says to me, the difference between you and John is about 100 pounds. And she goes, you guys just think alike. She goes, I think that's why you guys are so. I thought for sure that you would take the wing. And all right, so the only games we disagree is Rams 49ers in my move to 7-1-2.
I can tell you, yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, the record is what it is. Luckily, there's weeks to play. But one quick story. The first time I realized that we were seeing a lot of the football things the same, we had post-game articles coming from a college game we were covering. We both kind of sent them at the same time, and more than half of it was practically the same. And I was like, all right, well, this is good because I'm seeing the same things that Hondo's seeing, but it's bad like if we're dead wrong, but we learned from thereafter. And fortunately, over the years, we've heard from plenty of people. A lot of the stuff that we see is pretty good. And a lot of you all see the same stuff out there too. But yeah, sometimes it seems like this stuff's all coordinated. It's not. We don't always agree. We disagree enough to keep it interesting and also to stretch our minds and say, well, maybe let's consider it from over here or there. And if anybody stuck with us through this entire show, I believe they just took a nugget. I'll just say they just took a nugget relative to the Patriots that made it worth staying to the end. Thank you for your time, folks. We know your time is your currency.
Yeah, John, tell everybody where to find you on X.
I am restored at JP Spartan after somehow I got a brief suspension for suspicion of inauthentic activity. And I said, no, it's just me. But that was a funny blip. So yeah, they said They said it's suspended because we think it's inauthentic. Like somebody hacked it, or I was trying to sell, soap or something. I don't know. But I'm back at JP Spartan. Same old me.
Check it out, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Johnny, thank you.